The ending of A House of Dynamite leaves you with major questions thanks to its ambiguous nature. Kathryn Bigelow's political thriller is now streaming on Netflix after receiving mostly positive reviews, as the director delivers a tense feature showing the lives of many people as America is under threat of being hit by an enemy's nuclear missile. With the movie's narrative split into 3 sections, A House of Dynamite shows how various individuals in the American government react to the developing nuclear threat. And with a countdown clock until Chicago is hit, it's understandable to think that the ending is going to reveal what happens to America in this crisis and how the president, Idris Elba, retaliates. A House of Dynamite's ending is far from definitive, leaving viewers with several cliffhanger and major questions as the credits roll. So, what really happened to Chicago and the president? Who was America potentially at war with? And will there be more to this story? Let's dive in. What happened to Chicago and America? Any frustrations over A House of Dynamite ending the story where it does is understandable. Major Daniel Gonzalez, Anthony Ramos, on his knees outside the Alaska base is not where you'd think this story would end. It leaves uncertainty whether he's still out there recovering from puking after the GBIs failed to stop the missile in the first section or if this is a return to the outdoors after Chicago is struck. Considering Park, Greta Lee, and Rogers, Moses Ingram, are entering a nuclear bunker moments before, it does suggest that Chicago was hit. This likelihood then provides additional clarity to what the president decided to do in terms of retaliation. While his decision is not heard, the fact that he gave his code to make a nuclear strike possible made it more likely that America would hit back. And if Chicago was decimated, then he'd certainly give the order. The certainty of Chicago's destruction is presumably why Baker, Sean Harris, took his own life instead of getting in the helicopter, knowing that his daughter was about to die and America was on the verge of launching a full nuclear war. That all said, it's not confirmed that Chicago was destroyed or that America retaliated. Gonzalez could be relieved to know his post isn't somewhat responsible for over 10 million deaths, with the missile possibly malfunctioning before impact. Park and Rogers could be taken to the bunker out of precaution as the situation cools and America gets out of DEFCON 1 status. However, I don't believe that this supposed happy ending for A House of Dynamite where America avoids war and everyone lives is what Bigelow was going for. The movie is essentially a warning about the danger of nuclear weapons and how everything could go south so quickly. A happy and peaceful conclusion would undercut that. The ambiguity about what happened to Chicago does sell A House of Dynamite's ending short in a similar vein, though. There's a lack of emotional and narrative payoff. Not knowing definitively what happened to everyone is frustrating. So why would the film end like this? Bigelow may have wanted to avoid the conclusion getting too dark by showing the nuclear fallout. A House of Dynamite also lends itself to conversation and interpretation with this ambiguous ending, which might also be a reason why the filmmaker and writer Noah Oppenheim crafted it this way. Who launched the missile? The other unanswered question at the heart of A House of Dynamite is who exactly America is on the verge of war with. The film refuses to give any indication as to what country exactly launched the missile, giving the film a faceless, unnamed, and vague country as an enemy. The movie does cross off a few possible options, like China and Russia, if everyone is to be believed. That still leaves a lot of other countries America has uneasy relationships with in real life as potential answers to who the adversary is in the film. It might seem surprising that a filmmaker like Bigelow, who has tackled movies like The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 with very real Middle Eastern countries as America's enemies, would steer clear of getting specific about the country in this fictional story. Yet, that's a lot more common in modern Hollywood. Movies like Top Gun, Maverick have used unnamed countries as enemies of Tom Cruise's pilot and all of America. Even James Gunn denied real-life inspiration behind Superman's international war. It seems A House of Dynamite didn't want to risk any political controversies by naming who launched the missile. Is there going to be a House of Dynamite Part 2? With A House of Dynamite ending as it does and launching on Netflix, it might feel like this is a possible franchise play. A sequel directly answering the various lingering questions would make sense on paper, and it's something that could help a lot of audiences even enjoy the first film more. Yet, there are no plans for A House of Dynamite to have a second part. Bigelow has never done a sequel before, and there's been no indication that anyone involved has considered continuing the story. Even if the movie does incredibly well on Netflix and breaks streaming records, a second part should not be expected. A House of Dynamite's ending is meant to leave everyone with questions about what happened. If Bigelow wanted those questions answered, she would have done so with this film. So, don't get your hopes up that A House of Dynamite 2 will happen and show Chicago's fate, America's retaliation, and so forth. This is the end of the story. What A House of Dynamite's cast thinks of the ending. While every viewer will have their own thoughts on the ending, the cast also has their own perspectives. During an exclusive interview with Screen Rant, a House of Dynamite's cast shared their thoughts on the ending and how they interpret different decisions. On the topic of the ambiguous conclusion, Rebecca Ferguson said it is one of the most amazing things about the movie. Harris said something similar, noting that the ambiguity is the point and opens the door for larger conversations. As for the fate of Chicago and how if the president retaliated, Elba confirmed, "We didn't want to know the answer." But, he thinks that the president would have kept the fate of the entire world in mind when considering how to respond. Unfortunately, it is the sacrifice of having 10 million people die versus the entire planet would have probably been his decision. When it comes to the potential happier ending where the missile didn't wipe out Chicago, Ramos said that's not his character's mindset in the final frame. He said he's not thinking it malfunctions and instead is just in disbelief. There's guilt, and there's shame, and there's deep sadness. It's quite clear based on the cast's views that they agree with Bigelow and Oppenheim's decision to give the film an ambiguous ending and believe the worst-case scenario is what happened. None of them know the latter with certainty either, but it does provide some more insight into the meaning of a House of Dynamite. The film is raising questions about whether this power structure is right for the world and showing how dangerous the current status quo really is. It's not interested in solving the potential crisis at hand, but more so in being the start of potentially necessary conversations.